Okay, so the pick'ems, they did not go very well. Silver coiner, gold coiner, L taker, as is the majority of people who are making these pick'em predictions videos, content creators, analysts, professional players. I think a common sentiment going around right now is, if you pass this stage of the pick'ems, you do not know anything about Pro CS. And while I won't pretend to espouse that claim, I won't say that that is the 100% truth. I think there is maybe a little bit of truth to it. For one, a lot of what happened here could have been predicted by looking at the seeding, but then again, you would be stupid to expect. I think I did say in my previous video that I expected one of these 4 teams to not make it. And if that indeed was the case, if for example Na'Vi and FaZe didn't face each other in that final 2-2 round, then I would have probably gotten my picks correct and moved on to the next stage, like a lot of other people, because of this cheeky little liquid pick that I did actually believe in. Now, of course, Gamer Legion qualified to the playoffs. I put them 0-3. They did play quite well. They played in good form. The individuals were on point. They played the challenger stage, and I think that gave them the preparation they needed. And 9, the team that a lot of people had as a dark horse to make it through to the playoffs, to, you know, give a hot take on how good they are, they went 0-3. I think that was probably due to a bit too much pressure and not any warm-up going into this stage. They got the legend spot. They would have probably been better off being in the position Gamer Legion was, where they didn't have the legend spot. They had to grind through a lot of these weaker teams. They had to convincingly beat, you know, Greyhound, Mongols, Pain, play up against Ents, all these teams which came through that earlier stage. And not having that definitely hurt them, I'd say. In terms of the teams that didn't make it from here, I think Ents had that kind of... A lot of people placed their faith in Ents after seeing what they did in the earlier stage. I know I did, because I had them going through, and that was correct. However, they just couldn't show that same form, and I think that's kind of been the story for Ents throughout this latter portion of CSGO, is that Snappy has consistently shown he is able to take these unknown pieces, take players like Spinks, like Nerds, and make them stars, but is unable to make them do anything at the majors beyond like a quarterfinals. I think they made semifinals, but they had a good bracket for it, so they haven't been able to beat good teams at the major when it counts, and then they lose to bad teams or not as good of a team as you would expect, and the result speaks for itself, you know what I mean? And G2, I mean, there's nothing I can say about G2 that hasn't already been said about G2. Nico with an underperformance. I think a lot of people have been unfairly criticizing Hooksy. He himself said that it was his fault that they lost that game, and of course the IGL will place the blame on himself for not coming up with the right game plan. However, as I posted a cheeky little meme which I made myself on Twitter, it's just to say I think it's a little bit unfair to criticize Hooksy for dropping that rating when cadiaN himself drops that same rating in a game that would have resulted in them not making the major if there was not a last chance qualifier. Of course, now FaZe is in the playoffs, G2 isn't. Haha, G2 sucks. But, you know, another thing that I think is very, very real to criticize a player for is Nico. Nico's underperformance in that final game, despite whatever rating he got for the rest of the stage, when it comes down to one best of 3 that you have to win to progress. JKS dropped an insanely good rating. He was playing very well. T sides, he was just getting that space that Nico and, you know, Hooksy, they were going in forward. They weren't getting that much impact, and JKS in turn had to do a lot of clutching, play a lot of strong mid runs as well. And I think he did that. He stepped up where the rest of the team did not step up. And Nico in particular, as the player who had this kind of narrative follow him that he hasn't won a major. He was 1 round away in Boston. Since then, you know, he had the infamous Deagle shot in Stockholm, and now he's not even going to be contesting the podium. And I think he has no one to blame but himself, again, at the end of the day. He had a great performance in Stockholm, so I think he carried the team beyond where the team should have been. But in these two, kind of in Boston and now in Paris, he had the team, I think, to put him into the position to win. But he needed to deliver as well when it mattered the most, and he didn't do that. So I'm actually not that sad about G2 not making it. I think that if Nico just isn't going to deliver like this, then they weren't going to beat anyone. Na'Vi versus FaZe, I think, is a bit of a tragedy. The matchup that would definitely have been a major semi-final, a major final, especially for the pick'ems. It's a terrible scene. And so, we get 4 correct, but it would have been pretty hard to predict this 3-0s. It would have been actually even harder, insanely hard to predict the 0-3s. And a lot of the good teams failed. So, moving on, we have to make the pick'ems for the champion stage, and here, of course, we can go in depth in a certain way. Now, the matchups we're going to have to focus a lot on is Heroic versus FaZe. And that's for a good reason. Heroic versus FaZe could have easily been the grand final, but we get it in the quarters because of the seeding. Heroic gets punished because FaZe clan went 3-2 and they have to play what would have been an inferior team, supposedly, for being a 3-2 team, but of course the format, the seeding, it's a rehash discussion, and of course I'm not going to rehash it again, but I will just throw this out there. I think while it's definitely good to celebrate teams like Into the Breach, I think they had a really difficult run. They beat a lot of good teams to make it here, and they definitely caused a lot of upsets. However, I think a format that has this kind of terrible seeding to the point where FaZe clan is the bottom seed, and you can say correctly, you can make the judgment that they didn't perform at the last major, they didn't perform at the RMR, why should they have a high seed? And I think that kind of, you're correct, but you're missing the point. And if you're going to be focused on being correct while missing the larger point of, seeding and where teams should face other teams, so on and so forth, I think it's just kind of short-sighted. But regardless, we can't change the format. Teams know the format teams should have delivered because they can't change the format while they're playing it. So at the end of the day, there's not much that you can do about that, and we're going to have to predict regardless. So this time we're a bit early, because I want to get this video out before the pick'ems are locked so that people can maybe gain some insight from this or, pick the opposite of what I picked, since clearly I didn't get it right last time. But then again, no one knows. Monty could win the major, but I'm not going to actually predict it. So, Heroic versus FaZe clan, I think we'll just go through some of these easier ones first. I think Apex, they've done a good job to get it here, and Team Liquid have had some underperformances from players like Elige, but I think the form from Team Liquid has been improving match by match. They've had a lot of practice to get here, and they're just going to win this game. It's not going to be very, fantastic. I think they're going to get it kind of 2-1. Apex might win their map, and people might start getting scared, like, oh, is Team Liquid going to choke? But I think it'll just kind of be a unceremonious beating of Apex, sadly. I think Apex have done well to make it this far. I think they should have definitely had this playoffs. I think they've been playing well enough to deserve it, but I can't give anything beyond that. Vitality versus Into the Breach. Now listen, Into the Breach, I didn't predict them to go 0-3. I had a little bit of faith in them. I didn't have this much faith in them, and certainly no one should have any faith in them right now. Sure, they're playing, without pressure. They don't have any expectations. I could give them a map at most. And honestly, I don't even think they're going to get that. I think ZywOo is going to make his first semi-final. You can make a small case for saying that there is pressure on Vitality because of the domestic crowd, but regardless, I think if you're playing against Into the Breach, as soon as Into the Breach is facing a disadvantageous situation, they're just going to collapse. They don't have the structure. They've only been together for 3 months. They don't have the stage experience. I can list 100 things that Into the Breach just don't have compared to Vitality, so that's simple. Now, Monty Gamer Legion, I could literally flip a coin. No one knows who's going to win this. I'm going to pick Monty because the individuals on Monty are just better. I think SDY, I think Boros, I think, dare I say it, Waro 2K is probably equal to A-Core at this current point in time. That's a horrible statement to make, but I think it's true. Regardless, I don't think it matters because you only need 2 correct here, and I think since this is kind of a close game, here you should definitely get, I think, both correct or at least 1 correct, so you're kind of hedging your bets here. That being said, I can't put that much thought into this prediction. You can't reasonably make a statement to expect the team to win here. And either team who wins will get destroyed in the next game, no matter who they face. Let's move on to the actually difficult matchup to pick. We're going to have to put some thought into this. Now, FaZe have been looking very sloppy. However, now that they've made it to the playoffs, I was hedging my bets against FaZe the entire time in this run. Watching them match to match, I was saying they're not going to make it, they've been losing, they're not going to make it. But as soon as they finished that comeback against Navi, as soon as they made it to the playoffs, all bets are off, no one knows, right? But I think regardless, Heroic, this is not a high stakes game for them. The crowd is not going to be as packed, there's not going to be any serious pressure on them to win this game. There's not really, you can't say Heroic are the favorites convincingly, but I believe that they're the favorites to win this game. So I'm going to put them through. I think their team play has just proven to be superior. The individuals on FaZe have been underperforming, I think. Match to match, we've seen some good performances from Rops to carry them through some certain close games. Twist has been noticeably missing. I think Rain and Brokey have been on and off. I don't think that that's enough to beat Heroic when Heroic, they play by their system. They don't rely on the individuals so much to perform, and that means that when FaZe's individuals aren't performing, their system is actually very reliant on the individuals, and that's why you saw them lose so much recently when they didn't make any changes. And you can say Why did they lose so much? They were just winning. Well, it's because they were winning by 10% and now they're losing by 10%. And despite them making it through here, I think they should have been relegated out of the RMR. They got lucky with North America and, South America. The Americas collectively, they lost. They gave Europe another spot. That spot ended up being a battle where Cloud9 also choked. So I think they should be thanking the stars that be that they even made it here, and they should wave goodbye to the major run. Moving on to the next matchup, I think Heroic beats Monty handily. Monty had gotten way too far in this stage. They got the freest matchup. This is a horrible matchup for a quarterfinal, straight up. In terms of, I don't even need to put that much analysis into this. Heroic, they just have a strong game plan. cadiaN, at this point, he's only proven to choke in the grand final right now. I think they've had that trajectory leap year to year, month to month, where they started choking in the group stages because they were onliners, then they made playoffs consistently, and then no longer onliners, they were just group stage chokers, and that graduated to playoffs chokers, and recently that's graduated to finals chokers, and now I honestly think they're going to win the whole thing. I'm going to put that there now, because I think regardless of who they face here, they're going to win. And I think that's where I'm hedging my, entire prediction off. Obviously, I'm not going to get the diamond coin regardless, so you can say it doesn't matter, but it is what it is. Team Liquid Vitality. This is a Vitality classic, I think. Team Liquid, they've done well to get this far, but the individuals on Team Liquid, while they'll definitely be enough to beat Apex, Vitality is a different beast. You can say that they might choke, you can say that ZywOo hasn't made it to the grand final of a major, you can say it's in his head. I think ZywOo has had the unfortunate circumstance of not having teammates and a structure to bring him to these finals. And if you think about it this way, it actually doesn't make sense that ZywOo hasn't been in playoffs that often, given that he should be a group stage farmer. He should be a farmer of bad teams if you consider that he doesn't perform in playoff. And yes, it is true. Statistically, I think if you ignore Simple's performance at this major, which is pretty terrible, let's be honest, for Simple standards, but, that's not a conversation for now, you can make the case that ZywOo has, not had the best out-of-game circumstances to make his case at majors. COVID definitely killed a lot of his options, and now that he has, one final shot at it, despite me predicting against him to lose, which I'll go into a little bit at the end, I think that's just going to be how the game ends here. And in terms of Heroic Vitality, I'll just quickly finish off on Liquid Vitality. I think Liquid OC has been lucky to perform as well as he has so far. He's farmed a few teams that don't have the structure to deal with an AWPer. I think he's better on the rifle. Honestly, I've seen his aim look very good on the rifle. I think if Liquid went back to, 2019 Liquid riflers, 5 stars type of mindset, they would probably do a lot better than they have been trying to force OC into an AWP all the time. And I think ZywOo has definitely shifted towards not using the AWP as much, shifting, letting other people AWP depending on spawn, rifling depending on economy, and not forcing an AWP when he doesn't need to, when other AWPers would always go AWP and Kevlar just because they have no money for more, but ZywOo would probably go with AWP head armor, utility, and, flesh out the round that way. So I think that change from ZywOo is something that OC could look into in the structure of Liquid, but as it stands right now, I think they're in for a reality check when they face some of the firepower. I think Spinks especially has been performing pretty consistently recently, so there's just too much of Team Liquid to deal with. So Heroic Vitality beat Heroic recently in a pretty unceremonious, I've said that twice, but I think it's true, matchup in Rio 2023. It was a best of 3. This is also a best of 3, so I think there's some parallels you can draw here. No best of 5 grand final because this is a major, sadly. Overall, I think Heroic, they've had a lot of losses in grand finals. They've had a lot of losses to themselves. I think if you look at their matchups overall, apart from that G2 Cato final, which I think G2 were kind of a lot of pressure, a lot of firepower, a lot of everything was going into that, and Heroic kind of, as the underdog, maybe they had a lot of leads that they just got firepowered out of by G2. So that loss I can't really put up to them choking. I think G2 just beat them through raw skill. I think in terms of all the other losses, I think there was definitely a choke. Losing Rio Grand Final last year, the major, against outsiders, Jame, I think, he called okay. I'm not going to say that he was undeserving of that win, but Heroic handed it to him. I think that what happened this time. Heroic, you've always seen cadiaN, he's giving those speeches, he's the main character of Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Of course, there are some people who think, cadiaN, Heroic, cheaters, should have been banned, whatever. That's a opinionated discussion that I won't be going into right now. I have an opinion, I will not state it. Of course, I think cadiaN has had a lot of time to instill this faith in the system and in the individuals into his teammate. And of course, that is a kind of flaw where when the system is what you need to break out of to succeed. I think you see, Simple, ZywOo, Nico, at their best, they break out of whatever structure and system. They do something that they shouldn't have done because they know that that's what they need to do to win. And I think that's what Stown and Shush and, some of these players need to learn to do in those key rounds. Stown needs to realize, I am good enough to make that decision and not just follow what cadiaN's game plan is telling me. Not because cadiaN is wrong in his plan, but because sometimes that instinct is what you need to win rounds, win games. Let's be honest, the pressure, I was saying it wasn't that much in the Vitality into the Breach game. I was saying that they can handle it in the Liquid Vitality game, but when ZywOo makes it to the grand final of a major in his home country, when Apex has to call as an IGL in his home country, I think that's where the pressure actually gets to them. And this is actually a unique case where maybe the out-choke Heroic, they get a lead, they start choking, but then Vitality, they come back and they choke their own comeback because they think, oh god, we're going to come back, we have so much pressure on them, all our fans are cheering for us, we are the clear favorites according to the crowd, not according to analysts, which is, that's all good and all. But really, amongst these top 5 teams, Team Liquid, Vitality, Heroic, FaZe Clan, which are the top 4 in this playoffs bracket, there is no clear 100% guaranteed. I wouldn't give more than a 60% odds to any team winning this. Like, Vitality Liquid is the most one-sided matchup here. And I would give that 60-40 to Vitality. I wouldn't even put that much faith in Vitality in that game. Heroic FaZe, I think it's 55-45. It's super close. It's super close. Heroic Vitality is also, it's almost 50-50, but I'm going to give it to Heroic. And this is my picks. Obviously, it doesn't say update picks here because this is actually my picks. I already had them locked in. Of course, I'm not going to risk, misclick here and there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Share your own picks. Tell me I'm delusional. Make sure to comment after the major's done, so that with the benefit of hindsight, you can tell me I'm wrong. Even though I made the video predicting it, I put my pedigree as a wannabe analyst on the line, and you're just saying, you put the pick'ems in, you didn't justify it, and now you're gonna tell me, get owned. How could you have predicted that Team Liquid didn't win the major? Well, shut up. And thank you for watching. I'll see you soon, maybe with some more CS content, maybe with some other content. Catch you guys next time.